Oh, it's such a pleasure to be here with all of you. I'm just going to quickly get started with sharing a little bit about how we all connected because I think it's an interesting story and I love hearing how people connect. And I want to thank all of our attendees for joining today as well. Um, Last year, a good friend of mine, Melissa, who works at LinkedIn, connected me to Kareem, who is working on getting into cybersecurity. And so we've remained in touch, which is great. And then last year, actually, I remember, Naomi, you had a post that really resonated with me. And I think I had messaged you on LinkedIn to share that, and you connected with me. And then Diana, when I came here to Cyber Future Foundation and started working with Val, I met you. You're part of on the board of our organization. And I saw a tech cast that Ashwin did with you, and I liked it. So got connected to Ashwin. And then Brian came by way of connection from Val's friend, Peter, and he's also interning with us this summer. So I think it's no coincidence that we all have a passion of cybersecurity and helping others. And, we're all open to learning and exchanging information, no matter, what ages we are. So welcome everyone, and Ashwin for being my co-host today. We're going to talk about some of the great things that Diana and Naomi are doing in cybersecurity in their career trek, but then also the challenges that we overcome or need to overcome with getting into cybersecurity. And Brian and Kareem will share their journey right now and then be able to ask questions. And we're all here to just kind of help make that an easier process for everybody. So without further ado, I'd love for each of you to just share more information about yourself, and then we'll get started. Diana, we'll start with you.
Okay, so I've been in IT for over 30 years, but I actually fell in love with computers back in the 1970s when the DARPANET was around, and which was a precursor to the internet. And I just fell in love with the fact that people could connect like this. I mean, back then it was all just command line, but we did have talk. It was like instant messaging. We had email. So I was just amazed that people could communicate and connect. And I felt like it was really the future. And when I graduated out of college, I was actually an English major in college, but when I graduated out, I didn't know what kind of career I could have in IT. So I went into editorial work, but I was always the go-to computer person. And eventually someone came to me and said, I think that your career is really in IT and technology. And so that's when I made the move, and I worked my way up to being the global manager of a network for a startup that was located in Cambridge, Massachusetts, but had 9 offices around the world. And somebody got onto that network and did some bad stuff. And I was like, never again. So I went from being network to really focusing on security and IT. And I've been blessed to have a very varied career. I have, in addition to being inline building and managing networks, I have worked as a consultant at KPMG Financial Services Consulting. I have worked at large and small security companies. I was a general manager at Symantec. I was a research analyst. I led the security risk management strategies team at Burton Group, which is now it's now Gartner for technical professionals. And the last 8 years, I spent 5 of them as the global executive security advisor at IBM. And then the last 3 years before that, or after that, I was at Microsoft as their cybersecurity field CTO. So I've been very lucky in my career. It's a time now that I'm giving back to a lot of others. So I spend a lot of my time volunteering and working with amazing organizations like Cyber Future Foundation. So I'm just absolutely thrilled and hoping to help support and grow the next generation. So glad to be here.
Yeah, no, amazing all the things you're doing and the impact that it's making. And right. Naomi, you're doing amazing things too, trying to get a message out. A little bit about you and your background.
Oh, sure. Hey, everyone, I'm Naomi. I've been in tech for over 20 years, security since 2006. I've been doing a little bit of everything ever since I left Vanguard, a huge mutual fund giant. I was there for about 12 years, and I learned what good technology and information security looks like. So a really mature IT organization, and I grew up there. After leaving that, I just joined some small, mid-sized businesses where I am now in my third cybersecurity leadership role. And so I'm the head of security for Beam Dental. We're an insurance provider for dental, life, and vision, and maybe some health later, but right now, just those three. And I love helping new people get into cybersecurity because I feel that there is a need for new folks to enter in there. The next generation of cybersecurity professionals, it really isn't there right now. And I feel like it's going to hurt us in general. Like the public needs more cybersecurity professionals. And since that generation really isn't being taught up the way I was and just being given a chance, I am now in a position to help others and bring back, just like Diana.
No, awesome. And yeah, I don't believe that there's a talent shortage. I think we have actually plenty of it. It's just investing more time and support into them because we've got talent here in this
Oh,
virtual,
absolutely. Yeah.
virtual
Let me be
room.
clear. The talent is there,
Yeah.
just the chances are not. So like we need
Yeah.
to start convincing hiring managers to give people a chance.
Mhm.
Yes.
Ashwin, super
Hey,
connected.
thanks for lining me up right behind Diana and Naomi. So I've been in tech for about 20 plus years, went up engineering, and then somebody gave me a chance saying, hey, you should probably move into product management. So went up the business side, got laid off at my first layoff, and then got into Juniper Networks, which is a routing company, which just happened to have bought NetScreen, one of the largest cybersecurity companies back in the day. And that's how I wound my way into cyber. Been there since the last 15 years. The last 2 years have been probably the most fulfilling as well as eye-opening for me when I left the vendor side and went to a small cybersecurity services and training company. But I spent about 90% of my time interviewing people on short video conversations. In fact, three of you have been on the show. Diana has been on the show. Naomi has been on the show. And Leah, you've been on the show as well. And so this is the first job in my career, again, talking about networking, that one of my first guests, Eve Mailer, introduced me to John Kindervac, Zero Trust. Diana, you know him really well. And John introduced me to my current boss, Pradeep, which is where I am right now. So again, the power of networking is something that is underrated. But again, going back to what Naomi, Diana, and Leah, you do all day long, this is not about for you, this is about others. And that's how you network. Again, that's my learning over the last couple of years.
Awesome. Yeah, I too left the vendor side and now at the nonprofit, which has been fun to get to engage with all of you and meet and hopefully do good things together, more good things together. Kareema, your background, which is so amazing.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Karima Mohammed, originally from Ethiopia. I have a bachelor degree from Ethiopia and a computer science as well. I just recently finished a boot camp on IT from Chicago. Right now, I'm working as a QA analyst at Red Foundry. I'm really aspiring security analyst. I'm always reading articles, following people, trying to get into analyst, some kind of role.
No, awesome. And I think your bachelor's degree is in public health, right?
Yes, it is.
Oh, which is impressive. Brian, your background, a little bit about you.
So currently I'm a student at San Jose State University studying computer network systems management and industrial technology. Thankfully, CFF was kind enough to give me a position as an intern where I've been working with them to promote initiatives in making an impact on employers, giving a chance to the younger generation to get into the cybersecurity field.
Very cool. And really, Kareema and Brian, I mean, you're the interviewers today, so to speak, and we want to encourage others to ask questions. We did see one question come through, so we will get to that throughout. So please share anything else or any other questions that we can answer for you and help out. But the floor is yours. So I don't know, Kareem, if you want to start and kick it off. I know you've got questions for Diana and Naomi, and I think that the questions you and Brian ask and from the background you're coming from and what you're trying to achieve can be helpful for everyone to get the knowledge.
Yeah, I'd like to add. So my first question would be, Naomi or Diana, whoever, what trends do you see, on the rise of cybersecurity?
I'm happy to answer that one. So trends in cybersecurity, yeah, there's in terms of technology, I feel that things like blockchain will be making new inroads into things like privacy, which will now blur into the world of information security. So you're going to increasingly see that blur between privacy, which is law and protecting the data rights of individuals, with the world of information security and how to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of that data. So you'll see an increasingly blurring of the two, and your private life is going to be merged into the public sphere. It's going to be a lot of that stuff. And in terms of like leveling yourself up to prepare for that future, you want to start looking at different laws and regulations. GDPR is a really good one, CCPA for California. All the different states have their own little flavors. So get familiar with privacy law and how that really affects different companies and how what they're supposed to be doing with our data.
Yeah, I completely agree that the intersection of privacy and security is really becoming a forcing function. We can't keep them separate or think of them separately anymore. And in privacy, as Naomi pointed out, it's very much a legally focused kind of practice at this point, but the technology is starting to build up. So people that are looking at technology solutions and privacy, I think are going to start to really, privacy as code is going to start to really impact. The other thing in addition to that is looking at things like the multi-cloud, and how do we make sense out of this multi-cloud world that most organizations, they don't just go into Azure, or they don't just go into AWS, they go into multiple clouds. And as they acquire things like software as a service, SaaS offerings, they're in those SaaS providers' clouds. So being able to look cross cloud, hunt cross cloud is going to be really important. And the companies that can come up with tools that can help with that, because right now, most of the cloud providers, it's very native, they make their own. So they're tools for their cloud, but we're in multiple clouds. So that's going to be a really big trend that's going to be very helpful. And people who skill up there, I think, are going to be poised well for the future. And data security scientists, as we look at machine learning and artificial intelligence and the adoption of that and the rollout, there just aren't enough data security scientists right now that are trained up. So anybody who's interested in that space and in growing a career that's going to be pretty future-proof, at least for the next, there's no perfect forever future-proof, but I think for 5 or 10 years, if you're looking at data security and how that impacts the reliability and the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of ML and AI, then I think that's a really good space to be looking at.
Can I just add one more thing to what Diana and Naomi said? There are verticals that are not historically technology focused, right? You're talking about mining and healthcare and others. So you should not just kind of focus on the big tech companies. I think every company is now going to be a tech company. So again, expanding that data and privacy and security to these non-traditional digital organizations would be a good area to kind of get into.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point, because Kareem, I was thinking about your bachelor's in public health and how if you went into healthcare with cybersecurity, that there's a big need. Brian, I know you like to keep us on our toes and you've got questions as well.
Oh, well, my first question is, how do you think COVID has affected the cybersecurity industry? And what is the importance of being adaptable in this situation, especially with most things going virtual instead of physical and in person?
Okay, I guess I'll start. I think there have been a number of different ways. One thing that's disappointed me is that as budgets got slashed, as companies have to worry about the future and about how they may be impacted overall financially with their bottom line, is that IT budgets in general got squeezed, which was really disappointing in COVID, because we went from being a workforce that was predominantly mobile and in person to a workforce that was entirely remote. And mobile and remote are different, because mobile means you can go into the office sometime. Remote means you're not going into the office. So this fully remote workforce, which is a very IT heavy to support, reality, that the budgets were getting squeezed. And a lot of people that were focused on security got reassigned to more operational duties as the remote support was an all hands on deck. So I really hope that we're going to see more of an easing with budget constraints as companies can now plan a little bit better for the future as the vaccines are rolling out, so that we can put some money back into the cybersecurity budgets. But one of the main things that companies found out when they went fully remote is that they had sized and architected for this mobile workforce, not for the remote workforce. So things like VPN architectures that were 10, 15 years old and really not appropriate for this new cloud native world that we live in were still in use. So there was actually a lot of transformation in companies being able to keep up overall with that change, and understanding that some of their architecture was outdated. And digital transformation, which is, it can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, but and I don't want to go too deep down into that rat hole, but if you think of it as taking your businesses and processes and optimizing them for your interaction with your customers through the technology that the cloud affords, then we can kind of bring that into, as we move to the cloud, companies that became fully remote also did a lot, much faster acceleration of adoption of digital transformation and cloud services. And that's going to have an impact in the long term, because I don't think companies are going to now suddenly regress from that digital transformation. They're going to keep pushing forward with this much more cloud ready world. So I think those are some of the big ones. But
I'd say in terms of the everyday worker who's not in security, COVID has actually made it very obvious that security is everyone's responsibility. So no matter what your role is or whatever your title is, whatever your position is in your company, you have a responsibility to keep your systems updated. You're not clicking on weird links because you're remote and you're not going to have some of the protections that you normally would in an office. So you're basically running a server, like your laptop is a server at this point. You're connected to the public internet. You have things running on it that connect back and forth on different machines. So you have to be like a system administrator in some respects. A lot of people don't recognize this, and they just still go about their day, and they just start, downloading things, clicking on links. And so what we're seeing here in the COVID world is that people who are able to adapt and to take responsibility for security, those companies are actually going to end up doing better at the end of COVID versus companies who are a little bit more stagnant, again, not transforming digitally, like Diana said. Those are the companies that are probably not going to do as well as companies that can transform themselves and be more flexible.
Yeah, and I know the hiring process changed a bit over COVID too, right? I mean, there were always those remote type of jobs like sales, et cetera, by region that they, were used to hiring remote, but for other roles, and especially in cybersecurity, that did change. And I can only imagine what it was like looking for a job in that time period. Kareem, I'm sure you have a question or even anything to share of your experience with that, or what you overcame.
Yeah, my question would be, what advice would you give for someone, who just want to get in, who just want to start? Where do you think they should start?
Within starting in cybersecurity?
Yeah.
And I think that's a good question too. We have from an attendee here with us that, was someone with no experience in IT, and they're trying to soak up as much information as possible, similar to you and Brian and what you're studying in school. Tips for getting in, landing an interview for cybersecurity entry-level positions. Any advice, Diana and Naomi, that you have?
I think that the first thing to think about is why you want to be in cybersecurity, and then taking that why and figure out where you want to be in cybersecurity. And I coach and mentor a lot of people. And very often when someone's doing a transition into cyber and I say, why do you want to be in cyber? They say, because there's zero unemployment, which is a little bit, that's not exactly the case. And it's a very lucrative field, right? Now, both of those are partially true, but they're not the whole story. And so if those are the only reasons you're going into cybersecurity, you're not going to find, so when you hear zero, like we don't have enough people, there's a gap, we can't hire enough people in jobs. Those can be very specific jobs that you might not want, and not everybody's qualified for those jobs. So when you hear that, and they're also often very much the entry level jobs. So if you're partway through your career, the fact that there's a lot of hiring need lower than you doesn't necessarily help you to advance. So it can, when you dig into the numbers, it doesn't mean you'll never be without a job per se when you're in cybersecurity. The other thing is about, the salary, it's going to be different, right? Some people make more money than others. Some roles make more money. So if those are your only reasons, those aren't deadlocks that you're going to be able to meet them. And also, think about that why, like what it is you want to do, because that starts to impact where you might want to have a career inside of cyber. There are far more technical jobs than other, there are a lot of technical jobs, but there are other fields and areas within cyber, right? Every single one of us here is doing something in cyber at different levels of technology. We need product managers, we need graphic artists, we need sociologists who are going to help us understand the mind of the attacker, the mind of the human being trained on how to not click on that fish, right? There's a whole lot. This cybersecurity is, I think Ashwin said it, technology is everywhere, and every business is a technology company now. So we need it in all the different areas of security. And also, Leah, as you pointed out quite rightly, we also need it in every sector too. So thinking about what you want to do when you say, I want to get into cyber, there's actually a much more complex question than you might realize. And deciding where in cyber, if you want to be a threat hunter, do you want to work in a SOC? Do you want to be somebody that goes out and does a lot of education? There are different paths into these. So figuring out where and what you want to do is really critical. And then once you do that, you can start to figure out, unwind what kind of experience you would need. So let me just give one example. And say you want to be a threat hunter, you want to work in a SOC, or you want to work for maybe a mobile detection and response a managed detection and response company, an MDR, and that's what you want. So that's more technical, and you'd want to show your technical chops. Well, if you don't have any experience in IT, you could show it in a couple of ways. You could go out and you can get one of the global certifications in security, like CompTIA's Security Plus, or the CISSP, or one of the ISACA certifications. So you could go and get one of these certifications, because I've studied, even though I didn't graduate with a degree in this, I've done some work on my own. The other thing that can be really valuable in those more technical fields is to prove that you actually have some of the technology that you need to be able to accomplish the job. And even having a degree doesn't always show that, but you can find ways to prove that out. You can join things like Capture the Flags and create a resume of, if you go to Black Hat and you win the Capture the Flag contest, trust me, that's something that hiring managers that are looking for technical threat hunters are going to be going, oh, okay, that really matters to me that they were, because that is a tough competition to win. So look at things like Capture the Flag competitions. Look at some of the bug bounty programs. We just recently, there was a bug in Zoom that a research team found, and they made a lot, they're getting a really large payout. Again, those folks can put that on their resume, and hiring managers are going to look at that and say, hey, these people, not only are they responsible in their research because they went through the program properly, but also they're pretty good at being able to find where there are flaws and vulnerabilities, at least in software, because they found the vulnerability in Zoom. So just a couple of things, but definitely start with why you want to do it and what part of cyber you want to be in.
Naomi, you do a lot of mentoring and coaching.
Yeah, I say the same thing as Diana. If you are struggling in finding out what you want to do in cybersecurity, there are frameworks out there. NIST has a really good one about cyber careers. So Google NIST cyber career framework, and you'll find all the different types of things that you can do in cybersecurity. Again, it's not all technical. It's not all penetration testing. It's very, very varied, very varied. And you have the ability to just go to different things and just try different things and see what you like. Watch videos, read blog articles, read books, just do some homework and be like, hey, I might have a good fit, and realize that your background that you currently have, there's always a correlation to security. For example, someone in accounting reached out to me the other day. I'm like, hey, I wish I can get into cybersecurity, but I'm only an accountant. Well, and only an accountant. Accountants actually do really well in governance, risk, and compliance because we need people who are minded like that. So somebody who is really, really good at technical compliance and accounting, like accounting is a great, great, great background to have for GRC. So go ahead and think about it outside the box that way. Take whatever you have. And again, we need everybody in security, and we need that diversity in thought and background and education. That's exactly what we're talking about. Take who you are right now and see how you can apply it to a career in cybersecurity. Again, use the NIST cyber career framework. There's plenty of ideas out there for you.
Yeah, I completely agree. NIST NICE is a great way to start looking at. So yeah, if you Google NIST NICE, you'll come up with that framework. And then somebody was asking, what about if they didn't win? So you enter the black hat, capture the flag, but maybe you didn't win, you don't have the chops. That's okay. There are a lot of different capture the flag programs out there. You don't have to win the biggest bounty out there. That was just an example of you definitely get noticed. But let's start looking around at other bug bounty programs, at what some companies, Microsoft has a really good one. They say, this is what we're looking for. This is the place to go look. So you don't have to necessarily win the biggest prizes. Just start looking at getting engaged and getting yourself trained out so that you can show the hiring managers the kind of work that you've been able to do on your own.
Brian, I think you still have some more questions brewing.
This one kind of refers to resumes. So most entry-level people, they don't have the experience they need. And especially with AI being incorporated to resume screening, how do you make yourself stand out without necessarily job experience or not even the same degree for cybersecurity?
Yeah, and that does actually align nice to another question we have where, how do you get noticed when applying for jobs or just noticed in general? I think that's part of it too.
Yeah, so some of the challenges are with the ATS, the applicant tracking system that, Brian, as you pointed out, basically there's machine learning, there's AI, and some of the systems that are being used. And a lot of these systems, what they're doing is they're just doing keyword matching. So they're looking for whatever the hiring manager, the hiring company said, this person has to have this many keywords that match. So one way to help yourself get noticed is, and I hate this. I wish the system could change. And I know if someone had been telling me this years ago when I was submitting resumes, I would have been like, I can't possibly, and of course, my resume was typed on a typewriter and printed, but so it's easier now to do this. But look at the job that you're going for, look at the keywords that they have in that job posting, and then ask yourself, have you done that? Can you put that, is that highlighted in your resume? And is it fair? I'm not suggesting anybody put anything they haven't done, but ask yourself, have you highlighted something that you've done, you have experience in, that they're looking for those keywords? Because that can help you bump over these systems that are just doing, matching. And I know of people that have all the experience to do a particular job, and the ATS system just kicked them out because they haven't matched properly. And if there's anybody who's a hiring manager on here, I have a plea to think very carefully about what keywords you're putting in and how you wrote those job descriptions, because some of these job descriptions, they're like kitchen sink. I look at them and I'm like, I don't have the experience for that. And they want somebody who's like 2 years out of school. So hiring managers, I think, should really be rethinking too what they're doing for the systems. But what can you do as somebody who's as an applicant? Definitely try and if you can, get more keywords into your resume when you submit.
I agree, Diana. And I do tell people, if you are applying online to applicant tracking systems and jobs, it's almost a little too late. Like, you don't want to actually apply to things, because what you want to do is get people to refer you to jobs, because at that point you're skipping past the ATS screening process. You can't see my hands here. You skip over the screen essentially, and you go right to not the hiring manager, but like the HR screen. So you get past that little first parsing, and then you're into that next step. So you want to be referred for a job, not just applying to jobs randomly. I know people who apply to hundreds of jobs and they really don't get any callbacks. And it's probably because, their resume isn't tailored very well. Again, it's not matching the ATS keywords. Exactly right, Diana. They're not putting their best foot out there. Your resume really isn't good. Like I've seen some really bad ones, honestly, but we're not professional resume writers. It's it's okay. So what you want to do is build a network of professionals who will go to bat for you. You build, those networks. You grow your network of people who now refer you to jobs and say, hey, I have this awesome person for a SOC analyst or for a penetration tester, and would you be okay with interviewing this one person? It's fine. And I've gotten plenty of people who have been referred to me for jobs that I do not post online because I do not want thousands of applicants to have to reject, honestly. So I really just go through my network for when I do have a job opening, and a lot of hiring managers do the same.
So I'd like to have just one add to what Naomi just said, which is from a networking perspective. Sometimes the question is, I mean, the imposter syndrome, but I don't have anything to share. So what do I share, right? I think everybody has stories to share. I mean, Kareem and Brian, I mean, your story about how you've come to where you have and how you've been able to change careers, how you've been able to land I mean, Brian, in your case, how did you land an internship in CFF? I think these are things others can learn from. I think, so without really putting yourself out there saying, hey, I'm this and that, it's like talking about your journey so others can learn from it automatically makes you stand head and shoulders above the others. And I'd hire you in a heartbeat right now, just because of the fact the innovation you've shown, the initiative you've shown to be able to stand up over there and do what you're doing at CFF right now, right? So you look for ways that will actually make you less risky and make you more attractive towards hiring managers without really promoting yourself, obviously.
Yeah, it's a good point too, because I think about when, we were entry level and just starting out, maybe some of you are thinking, I don't have a ton of connections yet. How do I get them, right? And I'm going to call out one of our attendees by name, because if you all find her on LinkedIn, I think she does a really nice job. One thing some people will advise on is what you're doing now that is applicable to cybersecurity, share that, post it, start building your brand, right? LinkedIn's a great resource. Just being here part today to be part of this session is great. But this Zoe Martin is someone to check out. And I think has her LinkedIn as aspiring cybersecurity analyst, and she'll do write-ups on sessions and post them and publicize what she's doing as she's learning, as she's growing, as she's taking the courses. And I think that holds a lot of weight as well.
Yeah, and one thing we haven't talked about, but is another really good way to get some level of experience, is internships or externships. And it doesn't have to be through your school. You can do internships through programs like WESIS, for example, wesis.org. So think about that too. I've actually had a couple of great interns that I've worked with at large companies. Interns, it's basically it's one big way that they recruit. So both at IBM and Microsoft, every intern I worked with got a job offer from the companies to join, and it can really help you build up that experience. And some internships are paid too. I know some people can't afford to take an unpaid internship. So if you can at school, maybe find one that's a few hours a week that's unpaid, if that works for you, or start looking at the paid internship roles with some of the tech companies. That's another great way to get a door, your foot in the door.
Yeah, and there's more and more, I think we'll start seeing apprenticeship programs. It started a few years back with IT and networking, and cybersecurity I believe we'll start seeing adoption there. There are programs from being funded by the U.S. Department of Labor and others, and those are also great ways where they will also give you the on-the-job training, and it's paid. So keep a lookout for that. That is an option too. And I forget, between Brian and Kareem, you still have questions. So whoever wants to jump in next.
Yeah, I can ask about vendor-specific, foundational, basic certifications, right? So when someone is interested in, cybersecurity, it's plenty of information out there, but it's hard to funnel it down and make a decision which one is foundational and which one is, very specific. If you can talk a little more on that.
So with the vendor certifications, I mean, they're fantastic. Most of them are fantastic programs, especially the ones from the larger vendors. They've spent a long time, creating really good programs. But the main thing to keep in mind is that if it's a vendor certification, it's for that vendor's offering. So if you're a huge Azure fan or you're a huge AWS fan, get that certification. It will help you get jobs either with that vendor or with one of the value added resellers or with an end user company that wants to have somebody who's expert in there. But keep in mind that if you get AWS and you're applying for Azure jobs, it's not going to help you. So be, understand that the knowledge that you learn is actually fairly transferable. But if they're looking for certification from vendor A and you have it from vendor B, unless they're really open-minded. I was the kind of hiring manager that I was like, that shows that they understand it. But most of the time, those ATS systems are going to go bloop. So think about that as you're focusing on which certification you get. And then you can also, I would really strongly augment it with some of the more comprehensive certifications from the associations like ISACA, from ISC Squared, from CompTIA, because those are very transferable. They don't just show you one particular vendor. But again, if you really, really want to be an AWS expert, then get that AWS certification.
Naomi, do you have any other comments as well on that, the vendor specifics?
Yeah, just remember that certifications aren't like a magic formula to get you a job. It'll help you pass some applicant tracking system screenings for sure. And sometimes hiring managers do look for specific certifications and they just help prove that you do know certain things. But just know, like, just take it because, or just do the certification because you want to learn. Like, that's just part of your culture, your personality, right? You want to learn, you have that thirst for knowledge. Fill that thirst for knowledge with the knowledge that you're learning from taking the certification and studying for it, but don't make that your end goal. Don't be like, hey, I'm done. I got the certification and now I'm guaranteed a job. Like, that's not what happens here. Like, you get the certification because you have this desire to learn and then keep learning after that, because the AWS certification, AWS changes all the time. They're completely adding new services all the time. They're changing things. So you get the certification and then you have to keep going. Like, that's not the end result. So think of it that way. It's just more of a journey for you. And by the way, great, I got a certification. That's awesome. Good to have on your resume, but that's not your end goal. That's not the magic formula. There's no such thing.
Yeah. And I like what one of the attendees said, continuous learning, constant, because as technology advances, I mean, we went from on-premise years ago, that still environments are in that, to cloud. So it's going to continue to advance. Brian.
So since most of us are at a remote setting, what are ways that people that are trying to get into cybersecurity can build up their technical skills and knowledge at home without, like, I know there's boot camps in cybersecurity, but they would cost like tens of thousands of dollars. And let's say not everybody has the funding to support that. What are some ways that you yourself can continue your passion at home in cybersecurity?
I always tell people to build a home lab, and it's really easy to do. You can actually get some free credits from all the different cloud providers. I think Google has like $300 in free credits. Just be careful you're not leaving VMs on, because that will rack up the bills. I learned the hard way. So go ahead and stand up a home lab in a cloud. There's project ideas all over the place. I like to go to medium.com for blog articles, and I just copy what the person did. There's one really good one that's just how to set up a honeypot in AWS. And so you just go step by step. You follow along in the blog, and you do exactly what you start with an AWS account, protect that account, and then just keep going, following through the directions, setting up a honeypot. And it's really interesting. You learn a lot. Then you do integrations on top of that. So you create your foundational infrastructure, and then you just integrate different services and tools. And that's how you really learn. You build things with your hands, and you see how things break, or you try to break it, or you do things and you tell people about it. That's the best part. Then you write a blog article about what you learned. And all of that learning and all of those contributions, that's what makes you stand out to people. Not only are you now, just taking in information and digesting it, you are now contributing back to the community. And that is when you start standing out to employers and to hiring managers, because you're seen as a thought leader and you're like, hey, you have contributed back. That's awesome. Yes, I would love to have you on my team. That's exactly what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. The hands-on, set up a lab, start doing this. A lot of people are saying, I hear a lot, I don't know how to start. Go to a site, go to like OWASP. They can help you if you want to do app layer penetration testing, for example, and set up servers. Start to, you can start doing some reverse engineering, understand how these systems work. And as Naomi said, there's nothing like hands-on to be able to start, some people learn by books, but a lot of people really do learn by being able to interact, and love the suggestion of start writing about what you're learning, because that makes you stand out and people know that you're really dedicated and that you're thinking in new ways and also trying to help others.
It's one thing I'd like to add, again, just throwing it out there. So we're 6 of us over here, 14 attendees. There's probably 400, 4,000, 40,000, pick a number out there, right? People wanting to hear about what was discussed over here. Write a blog article about this, right? What are the takeaways and all the stuff that Leah, Naomi, and Diana shared with you, and make it available to everybody else. And share it on Medium, share it on LinkedIn, share it on TikTok for what it's worth. But the point is, I think the ability for you to stand out, exactly what Naomi just said, which is stand out over there. If I'm a hiring manager and I see you've actually condensed it, you made it available for others, that's initiative, right? I mean, curiosity, critical thinking. Yeah, I mean, I'd take that any day.
Yeah, and I want to call out one of the attendees mentioned, it can be demoralizing when you're applying to all these jobs and not hearing back. And that goes back to when we were saying, build the network of people and get someone to try to submit you or refer you, and yes, that's hard starting out. You're still building that. But, examples, what Ashwin just said, write an article, the key takeaways from this session, post it, but also engage with others and interact with them. I mean, to be completely honest, that is how I connected with Naomi. She published something, I messaged her on it or commented on it, and we connected on LinkedIn, and here we are today. So, if you're not used to doing that, it'll take some time, especially if you're an introvert, but, do more of that. And the more you read and learn, you're going to have a lot to say and comment on. And LinkedIn's a great format for that, Twitter, all the other channels, but that's how it starts. And hopefully it can help. And I want to take one question from the audience before we move to Karima. And this is specifically, let's see. I have heard that pen tester roles are very hard to get in as a entry level. I'm trying to transition from being a QA for 11 years to cybersecurity. What roles in cybersecurity would fit most other than pen tester? Any advice, Diana or Naomi?
So, yeah, I mean, with the pen tester, we've talked a lot about different ways that you can kind of prove that you've got some skill. Like, going to capture the flag, you can look for bug bounties. These start to show your skill there. But if you're looking at other jobs, if you're saying, well, I'm not hitting on the pen tester role, then you could start looking at things like threat hunter or SOC analyst, because these start to get you, they get you in a foot in the door, and they're adjacent to things like pen testers. If you're a SOC analyst and you get an alert and you have to go hunt through the network to understand whether or not that was a real alert or not, it was a false positive, then just that'll really help you to give to learn to show that you're doing that kind of level of learning. The same with threat hunters. So they take things, these IOCs, indicators of compromise, and they go and look for you to see if they're, if we have this, is this EXE anywhere in our network? So that's starting to give you the feel for what's going on in the network and some experience. And what are pen testers doing? They're trying to find out where the vulnerabilities are in the network of the application. So if you're the person that's in charge of going and looking at it, are there IOCs in the network, you're getting some of those experience, some of that level of experience. So those are some of the things I think that could help you if your heart's really set on pen tester. If you spend a couple of years as a SOC analyst, you're probably going to be well suited to be able to move into pen testing.
I'll also say that QA has kind of changed over the years. So I know you've been in it for 11 years, and I'm sure you started as a manual QA tester, and that's really dying out. A lot of it's more automated now. And the good news here is there's a lot of automation for application security as well. So think of your CI/CD pipeline. There's security checks built into each part of that pipeline, and a lot of that's automated, a lot of scripting, a lot of checks. And when you check in some code, all these scripts run, right? Your QA scripts run, your regression tests run, and your security checks run as well. It's doing security tests, security QA regression testing, essentially. So if you can write scripts, QA tester, you can very easily transform that into security QA, security regression testing, things like that. So you have the basic foundations if you can do that kind of stuff. Again, moving away from that manual testing and more into that automation, because that's already building in nowadays into the CI/CD pipeline, continuous integration, continued development. You want to add those skills on top to help out the application teams, and you are now an application security engineer.
Awesome. Great advice. Karima.
Yeah, I want to call out something that I saw on the chat. Masood, he said IT professionals now they feel like a doctor. I thought that was funny. Yeah, one last question. Why do you think cyber criminals mostly target non-for-profits and charities so much?
Why are cyber criminals targeting nonprofits so much? Yeah, so and schools is one area where they just, research has been showing that they're targeting schools a lot more frequently recently. Criminals want to accomplish a goal. So cyber, if it's nation state, they want to do spycraft, they want to get information about their adversary. If you're a cyber criminal, in general, your goal is to make money. So you want to go after a target that you're going to be able to get money back from. Initially, when we look historically at where attacks were on the web and online, it was very much at the financial services, because that's where the money was, right? Why do bank robbers rob banks? But as techniques like ransomware have shown, you can get money out of organizations. If you can get a lot of organizations to all give you a little bit of money, then you can be very profitable as a cyber criminal who's trying to monetize your attacks. So they have started to, in that case, right, if you're going to get $500 from a ransomware attack, are you more likely to land that at giant bank and, that has a huge amount of money that they're spending on their security? Are you more likely to land that at a small organization like a nonprofit that may not have a lot of resources to spend on protecting themselves, because they're putting most of their money, their donations, back into the mission of the nonprofit? So that's one of the reasons that we've seen an increase in attacks on nonprofit, on health organizations, for example, and other entities like schools, that because the attackers know that they're kind of softer targets, they don't have the defenses that a larger, more resourced company has, and so they're taking advantage of that and extracting money. Most of the time, it's either through phishing attacks or ransomware, or a combination of phish that results in ransomware. So it's unfortunate. It's really sad, and all the more reason why we need more people in the field to prevent these guys from being able to hurt the vulnerable.
And I'll say the reason why they're attacking schools and things like hospitals is because generally they're not very good at cybersecurity. They don't have the budget. They don't have the professionals to help them. They're really just relying on very basic IT security functions, and the people who do it don't really have the training. So we do need everybody in security to help in different industries like schools, nonprofits, hospitals, because we're not doing so great. So we do need everybody, and that's the whole point here. It's the more people, the better, for sure.
Okay. I know I was watching the chat, and just for everyone on, there are people sharing their LinkedIn, so you can connect with them that they're willing to. So please watch for that, attendees and others. But Brian, any other questions from you? I think you maybe had a couple others.
I think this is my last question, but for when you're trying to find your career path, and there's a lot of resources that you could find, but let's say you land the job as an entry-level pen tester, but you don't like it. Is it easy to transition to different parts of cybersecurity field that are different branches in the sense, because you want to explore different career paths later on?
Yeah, that's certainly how I did it. Actually, my story is I started as a developer. I did something called Lotus Notes, IBM Lotus Notes, client server technology. Super. Diana's like, yes, you're old too. I'm like, yes, I am. Very, very old. No, sorry, Diana, we're not old. We are young and beautiful. So I started as a developer. I took a class in hacking and I fell in love with security. And from then on, I knew I didn't want to build anything. I wanted to break things. So from there, I became an application security penetration tester. I was on the penetration team at Vanguard. And then from there, I moved into different things. I did security architecture for a little bit, security engineering, like things that were really fun for me. And I just wanted to learn more about. I did vulnerability management, like there's some really boring paperwork stuff, but you get used to it. You get a sense of what everything is. And I was only able to do that in one of those large companies because there were different teams that did that and they had openings. And so every single time there's an opening, I'm like, hey, that's a domain I want to try. And so I moved into that team. So that's very possible in those bigger organizations, but you can try to do that in your small to mid-size also. There are people who do security at your organization, at least hopefully. And then you want to just volunteer your time and say, hey, it looks like we don't have DLP or we don't have this other technology or this other function yet. Can I help with that? So you volunteer and say, I'm interested in helping with this. And then you help with that. So yeah, just go for it.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of times people will be really resistant to going to a big company because they're like, oh, it's going to be stuffy and there's a lot of red tape. But one of the big benefits about being at a larger company is that you can make these moves in a fairly organic way. You see some part of the company you want to go work in, a job you want to do. You can start to kind of practice for it and prepare for it and make that move within the organization. But you can also do it company to company too. Keep in mind that you don't have to have 100% of the skill set for the jobs that you apply for, that it's quite possible that the way that job description was overwritten, as we talked about earlier, and that you may only need 60-70%. And in fact, a really good job is one you're going to be able to grow into. So it's going to be a combination of skills you have and skills that you acquire. The most important thing, though, is to take a look at what you want to do next and get some kind of runway or path for yourself. So if that means additional certification while you're in the existing job, making new network friends in a different area or field, but making a plan out. So it's absolutely possible. And one of the benefits of being at a big company is that it can be fairly easy to do that in that organization.
Oh my gosh, so much. I literally was going through everything again, and I did jot it down so we can share after, and we recorded this for everyone. But one last question, or I guess one point on the big company, and then one last question from the audience, is the big companies. And, this is really for me where I made kind of broke into cybersecurity is when I was at a big company, Cisco, 70,000 employees at the time. I got to connect with a lot of people and Cisco's customers and partners. So I probably made the most connections being there in my 3 years. And like I think Diana and Naomi said, it's also, you can move around sometimes to different areas in the company. And I remember it was the SourceFire acquisition. So it was that team that they, Jennifer Legge, I'm going to call her out. And she said, hey, why don't you come over to security? And at the time, this guy who was leading security was Chris Young. He's down at Microsoft. And I was just impressed by what the team did. I loved seeing the threat research reports, reading about, I was just intrigued. And so that's kind of what got my interest to transition from IT networking into cybersecurity. And that's how it happened, being at a big company. But one last question from the audience. So this one, and I know who it's from, I won't say your name, but he's in healthcare, IT and security. He said, incident response experience during interviews is a big topic, but more so as of late. So short of having hands-on experience, which silos can prevent, or simply reciting the typical 4 stages of an IRP, any advice or avenues to gain more relative exposure?
What's the question again? I'm confused.
Yeah, they want to know how they can, if they're going for jobs and they want instant response.
Yeah.
Oh, they want IRs. Okay.
Yeah.
Additional, avenues to get more exposure to that.
So more exposure to interviews, or I'm still confused.
Instant response during the IR. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I haven't ever interviewed for an IR spot, but I've done incident response in my past lives. And I would say like just give good examples of how you were able to respond, detect, respond, and prevent all that good stuff. And you know, tell them or tell the interviewer what your role was in that time in that incident. So you don't want to just say we did this or we did that. Say how you or I use I words, explain how you were able to affect the outcome positively and the things that you learned. And then, you know, any improvements, any metrics you can tell. So those are the kind of things that I like to hear in interviews if I were interviewing for an IR team member, which I have not yet, but I will.
Yeah, and also, you know, think about like it doesn't have to just be like, oh my God, there was a giant breach and we all went to a war room and we figured out, you know, stuff was flying in the Slack channel as we were doing the reverse engineer on that malware, right? It doesn't have to be that you were in the middle of some giant breach, like you know, when everybody was responding to WannaCry, for example. It could be that you were working in a SOC and there was an alert and you responded to that. So really think about your experience and make sure, have you done any kind of response? It doesn't, I think a lot of us go straight to like, I've never been in a war room, or I'm not on an incident response team, but you may have been adjacent to the activities and you've been involved in that. So think about what you've done and widen how you're defining incident response and see if you can bring some of that experience in. And great advice from Naomi about also, remember to say what you did. I did this, yes, you were part of a team, but you did a lot yourself as that.
Yeah. Again, such great insights, advice based on the experiences of this group. And I want to thank everyone, Diana, everything you shared, Ashwin for my co-host today, and your knowledge, Naomi, as always, keep on fighting the good fight. We're with you on this. I think others are. Brian and Kareem, your backgrounds, your journey, you're on your way. And I think even all of our attendees who had questions and are also on their way, you'll get there. We don't always know our timelines, but you all seem to have shared some great information about things that are very relevant in cybersecurity, things that you're doing today. You'll get there. I think just stay positive and focused and reach out to us. We, again, everyone shared, most attendees put their LinkedIn where you can find them, reach out, connect, and talk more, reach out to us. You know where to find us, Cyber Future Foundation. And I think if you saw the post about this session, you can find us, all of us too. But I want to thank everyone here today, and thank you, Jacob. Just put yours in as well, your LinkedIn.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.